Ladies and gentlemen, that was the crucial press conference that was held by American President Donald Trump as well as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. In fact, just as we see those visuals from the White House, there was a Ukrainian map as well that was kept. But of course, Donald Trump asserting that there will be lasting peace, that the war is going to end, and that he will work both with Russia as well as Ukraine. Let me quickly go across to my colleague Srinjoy, who's joining us at the moment. Srinjoy, as well as Rishabh, both of them are with me on the broadcast. Srinjoy and Rishabh, this has been a crucial press conference, extremely different from what we saw in February earlier this year. But Srinjoy, coming to you first, what did you make out of it? Some sort of optimism, of course, coming out of this press conference?
The two most important words out of the press conference is security guarantees. If I'm not mistaken, because the press conference was as boisterous as it was, it appears that the President of the United States suggested at least that there would be security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, what kind of security guarantees was not mentioned? NATO came up briefly, but there was no guarantee that NATO would actually protect Ukraine. That is not clear as yet. The second point is, he said he would meet the European leaders, all of whom were his friends, whether they were British or French or German or Finnish, and of course NATO and EU. So they have points to make about the security of Ukraine, and they have less trust of as far as President Putin is concerned. So they are going to tell President Trump something entirely different. Now, these two are very crucial issues. First, this security guarantee. Secondly, what will be the fate of Ukraine if the war ends? What happens to the Crimea? What happens to Donetsk? What happens to Luhansk? These are issues that still have to be worked out. But the word security guarantee is the most important phrase you have heard from President Trump.
Absolutely.
What it means, of course, and what it means tomorrow.
The fact, as you mentioned, that this entire territorial dispute that still remains, that needs to be sorted out as well. Before I go across to our colleague Rishabh, let me introduce my guests on the show. Mr. Raymond Vickery, Senior Associate, Center for Strategic and International Studies, joins us. Tonight, Mr. Mark Brolin, author and geopolitical strategist, joins us, as well as Mr. Volodymyr Solovyan, PhD in philosophy, head of department at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Good evening and namaskar to all of you. Before I come to you, let me quickly take a detail, of how the day looks in Washington, D.C. today from my colleague Rishabh. Rishabh, we just heard, Donald Trump addressing the press. Some statements coming out of the Ukrainian president as well. But from here on, they will be meeting with the European Union leaders. What's lined up today? Extremely crucial meetings that we will see.
Well, if we talk about the most important thing, as our senior colleague Srinjoy was also pointing out, security guarantee. The two words are the most important out of this press conference. Remember, in the last meeting, security guarantee became the bone of contention, and that's where the problem began in that Oval meeting. But here, things look cordial. Apart from that, if we say this is a meeting that is coming just after the Trump-Putin meeting, and there we heard via sources that how Russia has various, red lines that cannot be crossed if peace needs to be achieved. One is the important thing, which is recognition of Crimea as well as Donbass as Russian territory. That is something that the US is now trying to convince Zelensky to agree to. So that is one thing. European Union, remember, Finnish president happens to be the most crucial, the Finnish leader happens to be the most crucial negotiator here. He has been the one who has been playing golf with Donald Trump and is being seen as the person who can bring in the breakthrough here. Starmer or Giorgia Meloni, Macron, all would be there. That it's more of a show of strength by European Union to Zelensky, but Finnish leader is definitely, the Finnish leader is important. Apart from that, there is also one more thing. Donald Trump says that he will hold a telephonic call with President Putin just after this meeting.
Yeah.
So what transpires in that call will also be very, very important for the road ahead. So it is going to be a dynamic situation for next 48 hours from here on to see whether a consensus is met for a trilateral meeting at a neutral location or not. If that happens, that will be the major breakthrough in the Russia-Ukraine crisis that is now crossing the 3.5-year mark.
That's right. Rishabh and Shinjoy, thanks very much to both of you for joining us at the moment. Of course, let me now go across to my guest. Mark Brolin, let me begin with you and understand how you saw this press conference. What were your big takeaways? This is, of course, in complete contrast to what we saw in February this year. This time around, there was warmth. There was also a compliment that Zelensky looks nice in his suit that he's wearing to meet with the U.S. president. But for you, what were the big takeaways? What are the signals that the President of America sent out right before he meets with the European leaders?
Well, you know that, not even them, if that's going to be accomplished. But I think since the two different sides are so far away from each other, I think the only solution that could go ahead and actually be positive, or at least stop this war from going on, is a demarcation line similarly to Korea. I think that's the only way. That would be a no peace, no war kind of solution, or limbo. And then you can add all the things that were talked about, like the security guarantees. It would be a grand peace, but a frozen conflict. I think there is no other way they could make anything happen that ends this within the next couple of days, as I can tell right now, unless they have something up their sleeve. But I think there is a slight optimism in the air, since they are talking about as if something could happen. And they have done so also before, but then it has been more political PR fluff. It seems like they do think that something could be going on.
Okay. Volodymyr, you know, he said that the U.S. president said that he's going to be working with Russia and Ukraine, that there will be lasting peace and this war is going to be ending. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, after the Alaska summit, he's been making the kind of noises that perhaps Vladimir Putin has been making in terms of the demands that, you know, you should forget Crimea and you should forget the NATO membership. With these talks now underway, what are your expectations? Do you think it's going to be you know, a Trump plus Putin kind of meeting where they're dominating these talks, or do you think the Ukraine and Europe will be able to place their demands through?
Thanks for the question. From my point, the biggest challenge for now is that we do not clearly know right now what are the demands, real demands of Russia, because what we are discussing and all the information we obtain comes from media, mostly American media, and there are many interpretations from Trump administration and by himself. We are all aware that there are some precedents of wishful thinking, because sometimes President Trump tried to portray some happenings which he'd like to put forward, but they really did not occur. And I think we should overcome whether Russia is ready to provide real guarantees for Ukraine, and we in Ukraine obviously do not believe, because it is in Russian interest to restrict the capabilities of Ukraine in perceiving ballistic missiles, in drones capabilities. Russia understands this threat, and I don't know what will be the circumstances and points of this peaceful solution and peaceful guarantees which the West is ready to provide for Ukraine, because there will be no guarantees from the West which will not be agreed with Moscow. And from Moscow, we didn't receive any clear picture of what frame is acceptable for Russia. So we only talking about some speculative topics, but we do not know the details, and this is the more crucial details. I mean, what capabilities will Ukraine have to secure ourselves? Because the only guarantee Ukraine will receive and obtain is Ukraine army, Ukraine armed forces. We understand that in upcoming years there is no chances to join NATO, so we have to secure our capabilities in the security sphere with no restrictions and limitations regarding our security services and army.
Okay. Raymond Vickery, as far as NATO membership is concerned, of course the territorial dispute that still remains between the two sides, Ukraine has been very clear. These are non-negotiable for Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And therefore, with that in context, how do you expect this to move forward today? Yes, this has been a friendly, warm press conference, and contradictory to what happened in February this year, Zelenskyy was, more or less almost silent, just one or two statements here and there, but most of the talking was done by the American president. But as far as these 2 points are concerned, how do you then expect these talks to move forward today?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's encouraging, of course, always to have people talking peace rather than war, and I think we have to give President Trump that credit. That having been said, it's pretty obvious from this press interaction that President Trump views this as all about himself and his triumph and what he has done. I was particularly struck by his claim that he had solved 6 wars, including the Pakistan-Indian War. We know that the surgical strikes were necessary after the terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir, and but we also know that Donald Trump didn't end that at all. And he talks about that he has done this without asking for a ceasefire. Well, the reality is that he's turned around completely from stopping the killing immediately to taking President Putin's point of view. So this is not encouraging to me. And indeed, as you point out, President Zelenskyy had very little to do with this press interaction. There are all kinds of digs at President Biden, as well as his President Trump's attempt to do away with different kinds of voting and decrease democracy in our own country. So I think the best that can happen out of this is, one, to keep the United States involved, at least in terms of material, weapons being able to go, and have some sort of unity between Europe and others who are interested in standing against this war, this incursion, this violation of the UN principles that are in the UN Charter. Okay. I didn't hear anything about what would happen if this didn't work, and we know that unless you keep pressure on President Putin, nothing's going to happen.
Okay. Mark Brolin, significant point that Raymond Vickery is making, that we heard about how, there's going to be lasting peace and the war will end, but what if it doesn't happen? What if these talks are inconclusive? What then? Now, this has been a good start. The visuals that have come out of the White House, it seems like a good start. But what's also important to note is the fact that he did this press conference just with the Ukrainian president and not with the plethora of European Union leaders who are present with him. Do you think there is a message there?
Well, in a way, yes. I think he wants to make the point that he is on better terms with President Zelenskyy right now. But as Raymond was saying, I think it's a more likely scenario that nothing will come out of it. I think there is more optimism than last time, but I think the more likely is that it's not going to end well this time either. And I think also one key takeaway from all this is that this is a war without any winner. Short term, I agree that it is Putin who has sort of the upper hand in a way, but he is also a loser in this war. There is no winner. I think Trump's key weakness is that his mega movement, I think this is his weak point, because many within his movement think that he has handled the Ukraine situation really poorly. And of course, we have Zelenskyy. He might be losing a part of his country, and Putin is damaged. He, of course, he has his propaganda machine, but he's dramatically damaged as well. He should never have entered this war. So there is losers on all sides, and Europe, there are the big European leaders in Europe who is now in a different room, as President Trump was saying. They are also coming off as far too weak than they want to be. So I think that is another key takeaway from all this.
Okay. Volodymyr, what's also interesting is that, yes, right now we see Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy talking, and there are, of course, these conversations that are going to be going through the entire day. But as far as Zelenskyy taking along European Union leaders is concerned, while Donald Trump has claimed that this is a big day and that he's never had so many leaders from Europe come together at once for such a summit, do you think that at some point in the negotiations, Donald Trump might also feel intimidated by perhaps what he thinks is ganging up against him?
Well, I think that for Ukraine and Europe as well, it was very important to signal that our positions are joined. And that was about all the lasting summits and meetings and calls between Zelenskyy and European leaders. I think that President Trump may reject this common position, but he cannot ignore it, because Europe is a big market, and when he talks that if Zelenskyy will not accept his proposals, and there will be no common meeting between them and President Putin, the United States may cut support for Ukraine, but that will signal that Europe may not rely on American arms, and that will push further Europe to invest in its military complex. That will be a very poor signal for American industrial complex, and I don't think that that is the issue, and with which Trump's administration will like to go into the electoral campaign next year. So I think that this is part of blackmail which we witnessed, but it was not so strict, and we didn't came fortunately into the verbal skirmishes as it was in February. So I think that in somehow there are possibilities to achieve common ground, and who knows, maybe in the coming days we will receive trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, Russia, and United States. Obviously, United States tried to pose themselves as mediators, but frankly, there will be no solution without engaging both sides, and no.
But don't you think, Volodymyr, that that's what Donald Trump is trying to do? Get the two sides on the negotiating table? That's what Donald Trump has been claiming. He's met with one side, he's meeting the other side, and perhaps the third round of talks will see Vladimir Putin as well as Volodymyr Zelenskyy at one negotiating table.
Well, we did not receive any signals from the Kremlin that Putin is willing to meet with Zelenskyy, and I think that in terms when there are no preparations for such a meeting, and all the previous negotiation rounds between Ukraine and Russia was like a joke. There were no real negotiations, just some attempts by Russia to push Ukraine to the unacceptable terms. And I think now President Putin, given that Russian economy turns into the gap of budget deficit, and I think Russians may face with lack of fundings to fuel the war. They may change some positions and try to blackmail Ukraine once and until they still overcome enough possibilities to continue their attacks and assaults in Donbass. But still, I don't think that time is playing for Russia.
Okay. Raymond Vickery, one of the things that was said after the Alaska summit was that because Vladimir Putin came to America, it has been Putin's victory, and how Donald Trump and the U.S. have succumbed to Russia. And to that, Donald Trump replied saying that, if he didn't come, it was, the media and the world would have said this is a defeat of the U.S. The fact that he came, they're also saying that this is a defeat for the U.S. In your opinion, do you think there is any winner yet at all in these negotiations?
There is clearly a winner in regard to what happened in Alaska. President Putin was able to come as a legitimate equal in the process, when in fact he was the one who completely destroyed the UN Charter stricture against using military force to invade and to take territory. He did that, and yet now he is perceived as in Russia as one who is an equal to any other leader in the United States in spite of this criminal activity. He is the one who is responsible for the killing, and yet he has been given the opportunity to say to the world that it's really root causes of some sort, and that he's not really responsible for it. So he clearly came out on top, not to mention that the meeting was held in Alaska, which many in Russia say really should be Russian territory, because the deal in the 19th century in which the United States bought Alaska was fraudulent. So yes, he comes out as the winner. Now, what Donald Trump is trying to do is to get himself back in the position of having made an attempt to end this war, and I give him credit for speaking out for peace, but at the same time offloading responsibility to Zelenskyy and the Europeans, rather than taking a comprehensive strategic approach to waging peace as much as war is waged.
Okay. All right. I'm going to come back to this discussion. Let's quickly listen in and play for our viewers what Donald Trump said a short while back as far as, security guarantees are concerned. Volodymyr Zelenskyy in a suit is concerned, as well as the war. Listen in, viewers, to what the U.S. president said a short while back.
President Zelenskyy, you say in the Post-Times today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelenskyy of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
Well, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
Talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also. And we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said to the one that attacked you last time. See, I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
And in the same suit. I changed. We live under each day attacks. You know that today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, of personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war, and we are ready for Trilateral, as President said.
Well, so that has been, everything that happened in that press conference extremely friendly in contrast to what we saw earlier when Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky had met. We'll keep getting you details of this. Right now, I want to take a short break and ladies and gentlemen, you are watching our special coverage of the Donald Trump-Zelensky meet at the White House, which is currently underway. Mark Rowland, can I then understand from you how you expect this to end? Because the world is on its edge. The world will have its eyes at the White House today. But as far as the conclusion of this entire day is concerned, what are your expectations?
Things move perhaps slightly ahead, and I think there might be this trilateral meeting. But if that ends with something positive, I think that's. I think there would be like a 40-60 chance that this will end really well within the next couple of days. But I think that it's still substantial. That means it's still a substantial chance that it will end well. So I think one tactical mistake everyone is doing on the other side of Putin is that they are exaggerating his strength. Russia is a lot weaker than actually Europe and even Zelensky and Trump has been saying. Russia used to be a superpower, and when meeting him, as was said before, in Anchorage 1-1, he received that superpower status. He doesn't deserve that super status anymore. Russia is certainly not a superpower. It's not even a strong regional power anymore. It's a regional power in decline. Belarus and parts of Ukraine is the last bits of the colonial empire they've had. So in that sense, I think that has been a strategic mistake. And I think in the end, as Vladimir was saying before, Russia is losing by continuing this war as well, because the Russian economy is in really bad decline right now. And if the war can keep going for a bit longer, they will be much more inclined to end this war as well. So I think it might carry on for a bit longer, but after that, Russia will not be able to fight any longer anymore either.
Okay, Raymond Vickery, quickly, before I wrap this discussion up, do you think Hillary Clinton will be given the chance to finally nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize as she's promised? Will he be getting lasting peace as he's promised?
I would hope that he would solve this problem and would get a Nobel Peace Prize. But his exaggeration that he's already solved 6 wars, including India, Pakistan, doesn't give me any assurance that that is going to happen or that he will deserve the Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay. And Volodymyr, last word to you. Of course, a lot is at stake for Ukraine. As far as these talks are concerned, of course, one of the 2 biggest concerns for Ukraine are the security guarantees as well as the territorial disputes. And therefore, how do you expect this day to end?
Well, the main stumbling block is, of course, territories, because Ukraine cannot refuse without fighting, and we will not give up. And I think that if Russia will not accept our proposal to freeze the front lines and Putin will not accept this proposal, I think that there will be no future for the success of this round of negotiations, and we will come into another rounds of long-standing war in attempts to exhaust each other, and who knows who obtain more resources, Ukraine or Russia. And given that Russian budget is sick, and they will have about 100 billion United States dollars deficit budget by the end of this year. This is obvious forecast. I think that Russia will have to stop this war the next year.
Well, we'll have to wait and watch if Russia does that, and whether Ukraine gets their way around with Donald Trump today. But thank you very much to all of you gentlemen, Raymond Vickery, Mark Brolin, as well as Volodymyr Solvyan, for joining us on Times Now and sharing your perspective.